If you can tame this stallion, Cowboy, my prettiest daughter is yours.
If you can tame this stallion, Cowboy, my daughter is yours, the sheriff smirked. But when the time came, they pushed the obese girl forward. The town square of Dusty Creek was packed that Saturday morning. Women in their finest dresses. Men in polished boots. Children running between the wagons. It was Bride's Fair Day. The one day a year when unmarried men could claim a bride, if they had the means to provide for her. Sheriff Hargrove stood on the wooden platform, chest puffed out like a rooster. Behind him stood his 3 daughters. Amelia, the eldest, wore a rose-colored gown that caught every eye. Her dark hair cascaded down her back in perfect curls. Beside her stood Margaret and Violet, equally stunning in blue and yellow silk. The crowd murmured with approval. Finest girls in 3 counties, someone whispered. Men lined up, each one hoping for a chance. Each one presenting their worth to the sheriff. Then Ethan Cole stepped forward. 30 years old. Tall, broad-shouldered. Golden brown hair tied back in a short ponytail. A small beard, neatly trimmed. But his clothes were worn. His boots dusty from the trail. He was an outsider. The crowd went quiet. Sheriff Hargrove looked him up and down, then smirked. "And who might you be, stranger?" Ethan met his gaze without flinching. "Name's Ethan Cole. I've got land 20 miles north. Small ranch, but it's mine. By your law, sheriff, any man who can provide has a right to ask for a bride." Laughter rippled through the crowd. "Land?" someone shouted. "Probably a shack and 2 chickens." More laughter. Ethan's jaw tightened, but he didn't back down. "I've got skill too. I can break horses, work cattle, build what needs building." The sheriff crossed his arms. "Skill, you say?" "Yes, sir." "Then prove it." The sheriff's grin widened, and Ethan felt the trap closing. "I've got a stallion. Black as midnight. Mean as the devil himself. No man's been able to tame him. 3 trainers tried. 2 got trampled. 1 ran off in the night, scared for his life." The crowd leaned in, sensing drama. "You tame that horse, Cowboy, and I'll give you my daughter." He gestured toward Amelia. Ethan's heart pounded. He looked at her. The rose-colored dress. The perfect curls. The way she held herself like she owned the world. She was everything he'd ever wanted. Everything he thought he could never have. "I accept." The sheriff's smirk turned vicious. "Good. You've got 3 months. Come fall, we'll see if you're still walking." The crowd erupted in cheers and laughter. Ethan didn't care. He looked past the sheriff at Amelia. She stood there, beautiful and untouchable, fanning herself lazily. She didn't even glance his way. But he would earn that glance. He would prove himself. He had to. This was his only chance. 2 days later, Ethan arrived at the Hargrove Ranch. The house was large, whitewashed, surrounded by fenced pastures. Behind it sat the stables. And behind the stables, a separate corral made of reinforced timber. Inside that corral was the stallion. Ethan heard it before he saw it. The thunder of hooves. The crack of wood. A scream that sounded almost human. He walked closer. The horse was massive. Black coat gleaming in the sun. Eyes wild with fury. It reared up, slamming its hooves against the fence so hard the ground shook. Ethan's stomach tightened. This wasn't just a wild horse. This was a killer. "You the fool trying to tame him?" Ethan turned. A young woman stood a few feet away, holding a bucket of feed. 20 years old. Round-faced, with shoulder-length golden brown hair tied loosely back. Sweat dampened her forehead. She was heavy. Noticeably so. But her eyes were sharp, and she didn't look afraid. "I'm Ethan Cole," he said. "I know who you are. Whole town's talking about the idiot who took Pa's bet." She walked past him toward the corral. The stallion charged the fence, snorting and kicking. She didn't flinch. Instead, she set the bucket down just outside the fence and stepped back. "Don't stand too close," she said quietly. "He hates sudden movements." Ethan watched as the horse circled, nostrils flaring, but slowly approached the bucket. You feed him? Every day. Pa doesn't trust the ranch hands near him anymore. And you're not afraid? She glanced at him, and for a moment, something flickered in her eyes. Pain maybe. Or resignation. He's just scared, she said. Scared things lash out. The stallion kicked the fence again, and Ethan stepped back instinctively. The woman didn't. You're the sheriff's daughter, Ethan said, realizing. She nodded. Clara Hargrove. He looked at her more closely now. She wasn't dressed like Amelia or the others. No silk gown. Just a simple cotton dress, stained with dust and sweat. Why are you out here? He asked. Shouldn't you be inside with your sisters? Her expression hardened. My sisters don't work. I do. She picked up the empty bucket and started walking back toward the house. Ethan called after her. Wait, you know this horse. I need your help. She stopped but didn't turn around. You made the bet, Cowboy. Not me. Then she walked away. Ethan stood alone, staring at the black stallion. It stared back, eyes full of rage. 3 months suddenly felt like forever. But he had no choice. Amelia was worth it. She had to be. Ethan showed up at the ranch every morning before sunrise. The first week was brutal. He couldn't get within 10 feet of the stallion without it charging the fence. Twice it nearly broke through. Once, it kicked so hard a wooden beam splintered. Ethan's ribs were bruised from being thrown against the fence. His hands were torn from gripping rope. But he kept coming back. And every morning, Clara was already there. She never said much. Just fed the horse, checked the water trough, and left. But Ethan started noticing things. She hummed while she worked. Low, soft melodies that seemed to calm the stallion. The horse still kicked and snorted, but it watched her. Listened. One morning, after another failed attempt to get a rope on the horse, Ethan sat in the dirt, breathing hard. Clara walked over and set a canteen beside him. You're doing it wrong, she said. Ethan looked up, wiping blood from his knuckles. Then tell me how to do it right. She hesitated, glancing toward the house. Then she crouched down beside him. He's not mean. He's hurt. Hurt how? Look at his left side. See that scar? Ethan squinted. There, along the horse's ribs, was a long, jagged line of raised skin. Someone whipped him. Over and over. That's why he hates ropes. That's why he kicks when you come from the left. Ethan's chest tightened. Your father did that? No. The man Pa bought him from. But Pa didn't care. He just wanted a stallion that looked tough. Clara stood, brushing dust from her skirt. If you want to tame him, you have to earn his trust. Not break him. How do I do that? She looked at him for a long moment. Start by not treating him like a beast. Over the next 2 weeks, Ethan changed his approach. He stopped trying to rope the horse. Stopped trying to corner it. Instead, he just sat outside the corral. Quiet. Still. At first, the stallion ignored him. Paced and snorted and kicked. But slowly, it began to settle. Clara came by most evenings after her chores. She taught him things no one else knew. He likes oats better than hay. But only at dusk. He calms down if you hum. Not sing. Hum. Never approach him from the left. Always the right. Ethan listened. He tried everything she said. And it started working. One evening, the stallion let Ethan stand just 5 feet away without charging. Ethan's heart pounded, but he stayed calm. Steady. Clara watched from the fence, arms crossed. You're learning, she said quietly. Ethan glanced at her. Only because you're teaching me. She looked away, but he saw the faint color rise in her cheeks. By the end of the second month, Ethan and Clara had fallen into a rhythm. She would finish her work in the house, then slip out to the stables. He would be there working with the horse and they would talk. One night, sitting on the fence rail, Ethan told her about his past. Lost my parents in the war. I was 14. Worked other men's land for years just to survive. Saved every penny. Bought my ranch 3 years ago. It's not much, but it's mine. Clara listened, her expression soft. Why come here? She asked. Why take Pa's bet? Ethan looked down at his hands. Because I'm tired of being alone. Tired of people looking at me like I'm nothing. I thought if I could prove myself, maybe I'd deserve something more. He paused. Maybe I'd deserve someone like Amelia. Clara's face flickered, just for a second. Then she smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Amelia doesn't even know your name, she said quietly. She will. Once I tame this horse. Clara slid off the fence. Good luck, Ethan. She walked away, and Ethan didn't understand why her voice sounded so sad. But as the days passed, something shifted. Ethan found himself looking forward to Clara's arrival each evening. Found himself listening for her footsteps. She wasn't like Amelia. She didn't wear silk or smile at men or play coy. But she was real. She knew horses better than anyone he'd ever met. She was patient, smart, kind. And she never once made him feel small. One afternoon, while walking into town for supplies, Ethan saw Amelia. She rode past in an elegant carriage, laughing with her friends. Her dress shimmered in the sunlight. She looked like everything Ethan had ever wanted. Beauty. Status. She glanced at him briefly, then looked away, dismissing him as just another poor admirer. Ethan's chest ached, but not as much as he thought it would. That evening, Clara brought him water and a piece of bread. You don't have to do that, Ethan said. I know. She sat beside him in the dirt, and they watched the stallion together. Why do you help me? He asked. Clara didn't answer right away. Because you're the first person who's ever asked, she said finally. Ethan looked at her. Really looked at her. And for the first time he saw past her size. Past the way the town saw her. He saw Clara. But Amelia was still the dream. The goal. The prize he'd been working toward. One evening, Ethan stopped at the saloon for a drink. A group of men at a corner table were laughing loudly. Heard Cole's been spending time with the sheriff's fat daughter. Poor bastard. Probably thinks she'll put in a good word for him with Amelia. Or maybe he's got low standards. Laughter erupted. Ethan's vision went red. He crossed the room in 3 strides, grabbed the man by his collar, and slammed him against the wall. Say another word about her, Ethan growled, and I'll break your jaw. The room went silent. The man's face went pale. I didn't mean nothing. Yes, you did. And if I hear you or anyone else disrespect her again, you'll answer to me. He let the man go and walked out. Behind him, whispers followed. Claire heard about it the next day. Her eyes glistened. No one had ever defended her before. But she knew the truth. Ethan defended her because he was honorable. Not because he loved her. His heart still belonged to Amelia. 3 months had passed. Fall had arrived, and with it came the day of reckoning. Word spread fast through Dusty Creek. The cowboy was finally going to ride the devil horse. By mid-morning, the town square was packed. Men, women, children. Everyone wanted to see if Ethan Cole would succeed or die trying. Sheriff Hargrove stood on the platform, arms crossed, grinning like a cat with a cornered mouse. Amelia stood beside him in an emerald green dress. Margaret and Violet flanked her, all 3 looking bored. Clara stood in the back, almost hidden by the crowd. She wore a plain cotton dress. Her hair tied back simply. Ethan led the black stallion into the square. The horse was calm. Its coat gleamed. Its eyes were steady. The crowd gasped. That can't be the same horse, someone whispered. He actually did it. Ethan didn't respond to the murmurs. He kept his focus on the stallion, one hand on its neck, the other holding the reins loosely. He'd spent 3 months earning this animal's trust. He wasn't going to ruin it now by showing fear. The sheriff stepped forward, eyebrows raised. Well, I'll be damned. You got a rope on him. I did more than that, Ethan said. He swung himself onto the stallion's back. The crowd held its breath. The horse shifted, muscles tensing beneath Ethan's legs. For a moment, it looked like it might buck. But then Ethan leaned forward, murmuring something only the horse could hear. The stallion relaxed. Ethan guided it forward, walking it slowly around the square. Then he urged it into a trot. Then a canter. The horse obeyed every command. Smooth, controlled, powerful. The crowd erupted into cheers. Ethan rode back to the platform and dismounted, handing the reins to one of the ranch hands. He turned to face the sheriff. "I've kept my end of the deal," Ethan said, voice steady. "Now keep yours." The sheriff's grin faltered. The crowd leaned in, waiting. Sheriff Hargrove glanced at Amelia, then back at Ethan. He'd been cornered. The whole town was watching. He couldn't back out now. But the look in his eyes was pure venom. "A deal's a deal," the sheriff said slowly. He turned and gestured toward his daughters. The crowd murmured excitedly, assuming he'd offer Amelia. But the sheriff's hand moved past her. Past Margaret. Past Violet. He pointed toward the back of the crowd. "Clara, get up here." The murmurs turned to gasps. Clara's face went white. People turned to stare at her. Some looked confused. Others started snickering. "He said his daughter," someone whispered. He didn't say which one. Laughter began to ripple through the crowd. Clara stood frozen. The sheriff's voice boomed. "Come on, girl. Don't be shy." More laughter. Clara forced herself to walk forward. Each step felt like walking through fire. The crowd parted, and she climbed onto the platform. The sheriff grabbed her arm and pulled her forward, presenting her to Ethan like a cruel joke. "You wanted a daughter, Cowboy. Here she is. My daughter." The crowd erupted into laughter. Men slapped their knees. Women covered their mouths, eyes gleaming with malicious delight. Amelia looked away, embarrassed to even be associated with the scene. Clara stood there, head bowed, tears streaming down her face. Ethan stared at the sheriff. Then at Clara. His chest tightened. Rage flooded through him. Rage at the sheriff. At the town. At the cruelty of it all. He'd worked for 3 months. Bled. Suffered. Earned this. And they turned it into a joke. He looked at Amelia, standing there relieved she didn't have to marry him. His dream shattered. But then he looked at Clara's face. The tears. The shame. The humiliation. She didn't deserve this. He had no choice. The deal was made publicly. If he refused now, he'd lose everything. His honor. His reputation. Any chance of building a life here. Ethan stepped forward. The laughter quieted slightly, everyone watching to see what he'd do. He reached out and gently lifted Clara's chin, forcing her to look at him. "You think you've shamed me?" Ethan said, voice ringing across the square. He turned to face the crowd. "She's the reason I tamed that horse. Not luck. Not skill. She taught me everything. She worked beside me every day while the rest of you sat on your porches and laughed." The crowd went silent. "She's worth more than every one of you combined." He turned back to Clara, and his voice softened. "And I'll honor my word." Clara's eyes went wide. Tears spilled over, but this time, they weren't just tears of shame. They were confusion. Disbelief. Because she saw it in his eyes. The disappointment. The bitterness. The resignation. He wasn't choosing her. He was accepting her because he had no other choice. Ethan took her hand. "Come on," he said quietly. He led her down from the platform. The crowd stood frozen, unsure how to react. As they walked away, the whispers began. "Poor fool. Thought he'd get Amelia. Sheriff played him good. That marriage won't last a year." Clara heard every word. So did Ethan. And neither of them spoke as they walked toward an uncertain future. The wedding happened 1 week later. Required by law to seal the deal. The town preacher officiated. 2 witnesses attended because they had to. Sheriff Hargrove didn't come. Amelia sent a brief note. "Congratulations." Nothing more. Clara wore a simple dress. Ethan wore his cleanest shirt. They said the vows. The words felt hollow. When the preacher said, "You may kiss the bride," Ethan hesitated. Then he leaned in and kissed her cheek briefly. Clara's heart sank. Ethan's ranch was small. A wooden cabin. A barn. A few acres of grazing land. Nothing fancy. Clara moved in, bringing only a single trunk of belongings. She tried to help. She cooked. She tended the garden. She worked with the horses. But Ethan was distant. He was polite. Respectful. He thanked her for meals. He didn't raise his voice. But there was a wall between them. At night, they slept on opposite sides of the bed, backs to each other. Sometimes Clara heard him sigh in the darkness. She knew what he was thinking. I should have Amelia. Earned her. I deserve better than this. One afternoon, Clara went into town for supplies. The moment she entered the general store, the whispers started. Mrs. Calloway smiled tightly. Well, if it isn't Mrs. Cole. How's married life treating you, dear? The other women giggled. Must be hard, knowing your husband wanted your sister. Poor man. Worked so hard just to end up with, well, laughter. Clara paid quickly and left, eyes burning with unshed tears. When she got home, Ethan was in the barn. She didn't tell him what happened. What was the point? A month into the marriage, Ethan rode into town. He saw Amelia outside the mercantile, laughing with a group of men. Wealthy ranchers. Merchants. She looked radiant. Untouchable. One of the men said something, and she threw her head back, laughing. Ethan's chest ached. That should have been my life. He turned his horse and rode home without buying what he came for. Weeks turned into months. Clara worked tirelessly. She proved herself skilled with the horses. She trained them alongside Ethan, often doing the work faster and better. But Ethan barely acknowledged it. One evening after a long day, Clara made Ethan's favorite meal. Stew with fresh bread. He ate in silence. Is it good? Clara asked quietly. It's fine. Thank you. That was all. Clara's heart broke a little more. One night, Clara woke to find Ethan's side of the bed empty. She got up and walked to the window. He was outside, sitting on the porch steps, staring at the stars. She heard him talking to himself. Or maybe to God. I did everything right. I worked. I fought. I proved myself. And this is what I get? A wife I didn't choose? A life I didn't want. Clara's hand went to her mouth. She stepped back from the window, tears streaming down her face. She knew he didn't love her. But hearing it cut deeper than she imagined. The next morning, Clara made a decision. She couldn't live like this. Neither of them could. She waited until evening after supper, when they were sitting in the cabin. Ethan, I need to say something. He looked up from the ledger he'd been reviewing. I know you didn't want this. I know you wanted Amelia. I know you only married me because you had no choice. Ethan opened his mouth to speak, but she held up a hand. It's okay. I understand. But you don't have to stay trapped. What are you saying? I'm saying if you want to leave, I'll understand. I'll tell everyone it was my fault. That I couldn't be the wife you needed. You can start over somewhere else. Find someone you actually want. She wiped her eyes. You deserve the life you dreamed of, Ethan. Not this. For a long moment, Ethan just stared at her. Then something shifted in his expression. His eyes softened. His jaw unclenched. He stood slowly, and Clara held her breath. You think I want to leave? He asked, voice rough. Don't you? Ethan paced to the window, looking out at the darkening sky. I thought I did, he said quietly. I thought I wanted Amelia. I thought I deserved her because I worked hard and proved myself. He stopped, turning to face Clara. But you know what Amelia's never done? Clara shook her head, tears streaming. She's never asked me how my day was. Never brought me water when I was bleeding. Never taught me anything. Never defended me. Never even looked at me like I mattered. His voice broke slightly. You did all of that. Every single day. Even knowing I didn't deserve it. Clara's breath caught. I was so focused on chasing a dream that I didn't see what was right in front of me. He stepped closer. I didn't see you, Ethan. But I see you now, Clara. And I don't want to leave. I want to stay. I want to build this life with you. Not because I have to. Because I choose to. He took her hands in his. I'm sorry it took me so long to realize. But I love you, Clara. Not out of pity. Not out of obligation. I love you. Clara broke down, sobbing. Ethan pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. For the first time since their wedding, the wall between them crumbled. And in its place, something real began to grow. Months passed. The ranch grew. Ethan and Clara worked side by side, training horses, expanding the land. They laughed together now. They talked late into the night. They built a life based on partnership and respect. Clara bloomed. She stood taller, spoke with confidence. Her skill with horses became known throughout the territory. People started coming to them for training. Business thrived. But more than that, their love thrived. Ethan no longer saw Clara as the woman he was forced to marry. He saw her as his partner, his equal, his choice. And Clara no longer felt like a burden. She felt valued. One day, a young girl arrived at the ranch. Maybe 16. Heavy-set. Eyes full of shame. I heard you train horses, the girl said quietly. People say I'm too clumsy. Too big. They say I'll just get in the way. Clara smiled gently. Come here. She led the girl to the corral, where a young mare grazed. This is Rosie. She was scared when we got her. Didn't trust anyone. But I worked with her every day. Earned her trust. Now she's one of the best horses we have. Clara turned to the girl. People will tell you what you can't do. But what matters is what you believe about yourself. The girl's eyes filled with tears. Will you teach me? Yes. Over time, Clara and Ethan took in more outcasts. Young people the town had written off. They taught them. Gave them purpose. Gave them dignity. The ranch became more than a business. It became a refuge. A place where people learned they were worth something. 2 years after the wedding, the bride's fair returned. Ethan and Clara walked through the town square together. People stared. Some whispered. But now, the whispers were different. That's the Coles. Best horse trainers in 3 counties. Heard they took in the Miller boy. Turned his life around. Never thought that marriage would work. Guess I was wrong. Ethan and Clara walked past the platform where the sheriff once stood. Sheriff Hargrove was there, older now, less proud. Amelia stood beside him, still unmarried, still beautiful, but with a hardness in her eyes. She saw Ethan. For a moment, their eyes met. She looked at him differently now, with something like regret. But Ethan felt nothing. He turned to Clara, took her hand and kept walking. That evening, back at the ranch, Clara and Ethan sat on the porch, watching the sunset. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink. In the distance, they heard the laughter of the young people they'd taken in, working with the horses. Do you ever think about that day? Clara asked softly. When Pa pushed me forward? All the time. Do you wish things had been different? Ethan turned to look at her. No. Not for a second. Clara smiled. But, because I wouldn't change a thing. Ethan squeezed her hand. You know what I realized? He said. What? I spent so long chasing what I thought I wanted. What I thought would make me happy. But I was chasing a dream that didn't even see me. He looked at Clara, his eyes full of love. You saw me. From the very beginning. You saw me when no one else did. Clara's eyes glistened. And you saw me too. Even when I didn't see myself. They sat in comfortable silence, watching as the sun dipped below the horizon. This was the life they'd built. Not the life Ethan dreamed of. But something better. Something real. A life built on respect, partnership, and love that grew slowly, steadily, through the everyday acts of choosing each other. The town of Dusty Creek would talk about them for years. Some said Ethan Cole was a fool for accepting Clara over Amelia. Others said he was the smartest man in the territory. But Ethan never cared what they said. He'd found something far more valuable than beauty or status. He'd found a partner who believed in him. A friend who stood by him. A love that was earned, not given. And in the end, that was worth more than all the approval in the world. They laughed when she was pushed forward. But the cowboy learned what the town never could. The strongest heart was the one they tried hardest to hide. And sometimes, the greatest love is the one you never saw coming. I know many of you watching have lived long enough to understand that real love isn't always pretty. It's not always instant. Sometimes it's messy, complicated, and takes time to grow. But when it's real, it's worth everything. If you've been through your own journey of finding love later in life, or learning to love yourself first, share your wisdom in the comments. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And subscribe if you want more stories that honor real life, real struggles, and real redemption. This channel is for those of us who appreciate depth and truth.